Alrighty. Welcome everyone to another live design streaming session. My name is Farma Henry, and I'll be your host today. If you're new here, this is live design streaming sessions brought to you by DoBetterUX.com, which is a platform and a community for designers to learn how to build better products and take their careers to the next level. Now, I know the crowd that is here today is rather different and not necessarily within the UX design space, and you want to learn how to do UX design. So I understand that we are having probably people coming from the startup space, product designers, design product owners, etc. So super excited to have you here. I can see that there are people who are joining the stream. I hope that there are people who are not lost with like the pre-chat conversation that we were having over on LinkedIn. And if you're joining us, please let us know. The chat is open. Please let us know where you're joining us from and interact with us. Ask questions, comments throughout the show. We'll be super excited to know where you're joining us from. I'm always super curious actually to find out, where are people joining us from? Which communities do we actually touch with these sessions that we are running? Are you in South Africa? Are you out of South Africa? Where are you in this world? And where you at? Let us know where you're joining us from. So This session is for startup founders, designers working in startups, or people who are trying to figure out how to launch their ideas onto the App Store. So, to build some sort of app in one way or another. Please also let me know if you can hear me well, if you can see me well. I can see that my bit rate today is not on the best optimal level, but we'll see. We'll try and just go on with it. I also see that there is a little bit of background audio. I hope that is not interfering too much as well. So thank you so much for joining me again. This is live design stream sessions. If you're new here and if you don't know about me or who I am, my name is Verma Henry and I am the founder of DoBetterUX.com. I'm a product designer based in South Africa. I have over 13 years experience in product design and in the design space as a whole. I've worked in different markets within the banking industry in South Africa, the startup space, as well as the e-learning space for quite some time. I've worked with corporates and both startups, as well as, other smaller companies as well in the smaller to medium enterprise type of space. And over the years, I've managed to launch a few products within the banking space, as well as some other public facing products as well. And when I say within the banking space, I mean, mainly within the corporate space as tools that would have been used within that specific space. So that's who I am, and this is why we're here. Today we are here because we want to talk about we're here because we want to talk about building products for startups. That's what we want to go through. So let's jump right into the topic without wasting much time. So product design and building products, especially in a startup environment, one key thing that I see a lot of people that miss out the most is really picking out the right solution to go for and the market to go for. A lot of founders and a lot of startups usually start the other way around, where you see that they come up with an idea and then they try to use marketing to fit it into the market rather than really solving a problem. So for me, I think product design is really about building a product that solves a problem, whether that is to entertain, whether that is to automate or make life easier or more pleasant in one way or another. These are some of the things that you might be having in your own personal life. So if you are working on a product that you don't see how it would work in your own personal life, it might not be sort of like viable to other people. Maybe you might not be the right demographic, but if it doesn't apply at all, then why are you even doing it? Especially if you're a startup founder, why are you even focusing on such a product, right? That doesn't even solve anything in your own personal life or even apply in your own personal life. So it's really about solving a known problem. It's really about already validating your market by having to solve the problem that you can see already within a certain community, within a certain type of people, within a certain cluster of people or organization, right? So instead of you coming up with ideas that you would rather use marketing to make the market fit, you should create products that are solving problems that already exist that you can point to. That way you'll solve a couple of other things as well, right? So this makes it easier for you to identify the users that you're designing this for and your first adopters and your brand ambassadors that are going to spread the word as the really people that you're going to target with the first initial with the first initial offering that you have. I can see that there are people that might still be caught up on LinkedIn. So let me just send through a quick reminder to join us here. I might have confused people with the whole Discord thing. So continuing with the conversation. So you can watch this after the fact. You can rewind. That's the nice thing about live streaming. Or you can tag along as we go, as we map out and play out the streaming session. So I've just pinged the people on LinkedIn to let them know that this is where to find us, no longer in the session that we had earlier on Discord. So jumping in back into the conversation, we're talking about, identifying the right solution, identifying the right product to build is really about solving a problem that is common to you, that you can point to, that you can see, that is already there in one way or another. So really, this really helps you validate that there is a market. It helps you identify who are the users that you're going to target initially when you get your product out. And remember, this is about designing for market fit and not using marketing to fit into a market that you might originally not be in or might have not started in, right? So that's the whole point first. So before we even get into getting from idea into the app store, and some of the first steps that we would do, a lot of people want to start with market research and trying to sort of like look at what the market is and how to size the market. I think all of that is practical next steps after you have figured out basically what is the problem that you're trying to solve. Is it an entertainment need? Is it a pleasure need? Is it something that automates people's lives, saves them time, whatever it is? That way you will know that there is a valid reason for you to build your app going forward. So really try and figure out what the need is, and then you can go on further to size what the market of that specific product that you're targeting is, to see how big the market is, right? That way it will be easy for you to identify who are your first adopters and who are the people that you target for things like user research and usability testing, etc. And out of those people, you actually create a lot of brand ambassadors, people that want to stand up for your brand and represent it in a specific better way. So that is number one, identifying the right thing to solve for, and then going in and to solve for it, something that fits in something that's already there in the market that you just need to solve for. So there's no point for you to actually go and validate if the thing works from a concept level, at least, right? You then need to go and figure out if your solution is tangible enough for you to be able to is tangible, and it actually gives you the sort of like ability to solve that problem in the way that people will understand and interpret that you want to. I can see that there are people also in the Discord server, so I'm just going to jump in there as well so that I can manage everything as we go. I can see that there are people joining us in the Discord server, so I'm just gonna be trying to manage everything and keep going. See how smooth today's podcast or session will be. Now I'm saying it's a podcast. This is how distracted I'm getting. So if you don't know what I'm talking about the Discord server, and you're just watching this because you're already part of the show, I've invited people to our Discord server so that we can interact with there for sort of like a pre live stream session. I wanted to create a mood where we can meet and greet. So now I can see that there are people jumping in there. So let me just say we are live. Yeah. Yay. Okay, cool. So I hope that way we can get people to come over to YouTube and see what we're doing. Okay, cool. So now that we've spoken about the idea around solving a problem and that giving you a market already, and you not having to have initial market research from the word go. When I say you don't have to have initial market research, I mean that you, by finding a problem to solve for, you know that there is a market there, and then the research that you're doing is really how to size the problem and getting the further details around the problem, etc., etc. So that is number one, which puts us to the next part of the process, which I think should be something that product designers or startup owners or founders really should invest their energy and time into developing those skills themselves, or really finding the right people to hire that have those skills, and that is documenting your ideas well. Now, there's a big concept around prototyping and validating ideas, and I've seen a lot of different ways that you can go through this, and I wanted to share some of ways that you can actually document your ideas down in the best way possible for you to be able to validate. So we're going to start with the traditional one that you might have heard if you've ever had anything about design thinking. I understand a lot of people that are on this live stream might be coming from the design community already. So there's the prototyping and doing usability testing. So whether that is high fidelity or low fidelity prototyping in a tool like Figma or Sketch, or what other tools do you use out there? Let me know in the comments what other tools that people use out there. I can't see any comments on YouTube. I'm wondering if the comments, if the chat is actually active, and if people can interact with it. Oh, okay, cool. Now I see some chats. I had to pop up the chat. Sweet. So there are people here. There are people joining us from West Rand. Cool. People can hear me well. Awesome. Thanks, guys. I couldn't see the YouTube chat all this time. Sweet. So we're gonna proceed with the conversation. So I was talking about prototyping and putting your ideas into play, into some sort of physical, tangible form that you can validate. So now that you know what is the problem that you're trying to solve, you need to be able to document your idea, whether in your traditional prototyping method. I'm not really going to go into the details of what the processes are and whatever it is. If you look in the description of the session on if you're watching it over on YouTube, I've put in links to 3 books that I would recommend. I'll talk about them later on in the session, but you'll see links to 3 books that I recommend. That's where most of these processes, the detailed level of the processes will be. But I really wanted to talk through some of the things and how you would use the information that you would find in those books that I'll recommend here. So starting with the prototyping. So this is the traditional basic prototyping and testing, whether it's putting together low fidelity wireframes and putting them in front of people to have first reactions. This is usually done between 5 to 10 people. Really, after about the 5th to the 6th person, you're really starting to get the same information that you would have gotten from the first person to the 3rd person. So this is a technique that is usually used to document what your idea is, put it in a tangible form, and validate it with users. But there's 2 other things that I wanted to highlight as well. And usually when you're prototyping, what you're actually trying to do is not to build out the whole app. You're just trying to highlight the key moments within that app. That way you'll be able to show, sort of highlight the parts that the user will be interested in, the actual core features that are going to be solving the problem for the user that you're designing this app for. So those are the things that we're looking at when we're looking at traditional prototyping. We're just highlighting, the key moments within your app, the key features within your app, and not the whole thing. So maybe if we want to figure out how people will use a sign up form, we'll design that part of the app and then validate that. So if you're validating a whole new idea, I would do it in 2 ways. So that you don't have to sort of build the actual features out. So way number 1 that I would do it is, using onboarding screens and designing a prototype with onboarding screens, sort of the sign up journey and a little bit of, the couple of hand holding that happens when you're onboarding a consumer, a customer, a user. Sorry about putting all those words in front of you. I've been working on a burger project recently, so I've been using the word consumer. So if you're looking at onboarding screens, they're very good ways of illustrating what your idea is about, and validating by the reactions of the people that you are doing usability testing with, to figure out if your concept and your idea will work out and if they'll buy into it, for example, right? So for example, you might want to design your onboarding journey where you give your users a little bit of education around what the app is. So that will be maybe some illustrations and some text, or maybe a video, and then just take them through the sign up process. That way you will be able to see from their reactions if they like the solution that you are positioning for them, and if it will work for them or not, without actually having to prototype the key moments as traditionally we would do as UX designers, to prototype the whole thing with the key moments of the app, with the core features of the app, and validate that. That is important if you're validating sort of like the actual features, because you need to put them in front of people, obviously. But if you're trying to validate an idea, a proposition that you want to put in front of people, I think this is a great way for you to be able to position your idea or your brand or whatever product that you're putting in front of people. The second way that you can do this, which is actually even more effective and more tangible, is by creating a community around that specific target group that you have. Obviously, if you know that you're solving a specific solution for a specific group of people, it's much easier for you to narrow down and sort of communicate with them, whether you're connecting with them on social media or on platforms like LinkedIn, as I have connected with most of you on the live stream here. That way you'll be able to create a closed community of not only people who will help you validate your product, but also can become sort of like your brand ambassadors, sort of like your early adopters, and people will talk about your product out there. That is a way more viable way of doing it than trying to try and figure out a way of marketing. We'll talk about marketing and other things in other sessions. I think it's a great thing to always have great marketing. It's really part of how some of the great products out there are built. Without great marketing, your product might not make it. But that's not the discussion today. We really want to talk about how to position and validate your ideas. So the second thing that I wanted to talk about is really building a landing page that positions your proposition into the market, right? And you can have there different landing pages, sort of like do A/B testing to see which features are people more interested in or would buy into rather. So you can do a landing page that has got your proposition of what your product is about, the features that you have, the benefits, etc., and you can actually leave sort of like a let me know when it's live type of form there that will then help you accumulate that is called the opt-in method. So you sort of like getting people to opt in into learning more about your product as you go, as well as maybe you might give them some benefits for opting in as early users, like getting a certain percentage off of the final product, or getting whatever it is. That way you start creating a community that you can really go back to and push out features before you go into a public sort of like release, and you can work with technical people that can help you with SEO expertise to optimize the different landing pages differently to see what traffic, what sort of like traffic comes from, how you word different pages and how do you retain those customers once you get there. There's other platforms that you can use for this. Just looking at the websites and, sort of like usability testing. There's usabilitytesting.com, I think, and other sort of like platforms that you can use to gather people that can help you test your products. But I think the best way is to really speak to the community that you're designing for and target them directly with either a page that they can opt in to learn more about the product as they go and give them some benefit for doing that, or something that you can create an onboarding journey and target it to 5 to 10 people that can give you feedback around how that feels when you propose it to them, when it lands onto their hands. So that is the second thing that I wanted to talk about as a whole. So number one was, sort of like building the right product, getting the right positioning and, solving the right thing. And the number two that I wanted to talk about was documenting your ideas down in the best way possible for you to be able to validate your ideas. Now, I'm going to move on to the next segment, but I need to take a glass of water. So please let me know in the section, in the comment section, if you're finding this valuable so far. And if you find this valuable so far, and if we are going at the right pace, if you can hear me well. Let me jump right back into it now that I've had a little bit of water. I can see some familiar names here as well. I can see Karabo is here. Hi, Janice. I can see I can't see some of the people that are in the Discord. I can't see some of the people that might still be hung up on LinkedIn. But anyway, moving on swiftly, maybe not so swiftly since I'm doing all this transition talk. Moving on swiftly, I wanted to talk about the third thing, which is going for speed, right? So again, like I said, into specific processes and methodologies and things like that, there are books that I have recommended. You will see the links in the description below. That way you'll be able to unpack. In this session, I really just wanted to talk about going through how to think about and approach the product design process and how to really move at speed. And speaking about speed, the first thing that you need to think about when you're starting up is really going for speed with whatever you have at hand, right? We really want to talk about you going for the main core features, the core thing that you actually need to solve the problem that you have at hand, that you're trying to solve. So think minimum viable product. I think most of you know and heard of the term MVP. This is minimum viable product. And this is where you really focus on only the core things that you offer, the core things that absolutely solve the problem that that you're trying to solve, and bring those things to the front, bring those things to the absolute front. That way you'll be able to validate those things fast and tweak and iterate on those features very fast, and leave the rest and build the simplest version possible. So that's the very first trick and method and way for you to be able to move fast, for you to be able to really move at speed without having to think long term. So when you are building and looking at your work, you really need to target for 3 months, maybe 4, 6 at the most. If you're in the startup space, you really don't have a lot of runway, so I wouldn't recommend going more than 6 months. You really want to aim for that sweet spot. For me, I think that sweet spot is within 3 months for you to launch your initial concept, and then from there you can go for sort of like monthly iterations. So going for speed is really important. You don't have to perfect your product at all in the initial minimum viable product. I think that is something that you really need to perfect along the way as you tweak your product. What's important to know is that if you think about the first versions of all the great websites that are out there or products that are out there, the first versions of Google, the first versions of Facebook, the first versions of whatever it is, Uber, Airbnb, like the list goes on and on. Whatever the first versions of those things were was terrible in one way or another to describe it, right? But what's important is that the reason why they were successful was not because of how they looked like, it was because of how they worked. It was because of how everything was put together and what problems they solved, right? So there was a problem of time management is saving time with Uber. There was a problem of communication and connecting with loved ones and high school buddies with Facebook, etc., etc. So if you look at all these things, they were not super shiny products from the get-go, and I think that is what's super important for founders and people to understand when they're launching a new product, is that these days you have got UI kits and a lot of things that can help you with the UI and really standardize things. You can actually really standardize things according to the platform that you're targeting, whether it is iOS or Android, and use the design language that comes out stock standard out of those platforms, and use everything else, all the other energy that you have, all the design resources that you have, all the thinking and development resources that you have, really put it into solving and building the core features that you want to position in front of your customers, the features that you really believe that will be the things that will drive the solutions that your customers are looking for, and will push toward the goal that you're looking for, and get you the outcomes and the results that you're looking for within the products that you're building. So go for speed with whatever you have, for speed with everything that you have. Aim for very tight timelines, 3 to 6 months, and I say 6 months at the most because that's where things really start falling apart. We start stacking more and more features and things into our project, and sooner or later, if you're in the startup world, it's either we run out of money or the thing never goes live, right? If you run out of money. So it's super important to aim for speed, and go stock standard with UI and things like that. There's a lot of kits and things out there that you can use already. So really go for whatever you have, whatever is disposable to you, and target for literally minimum viable product, nothing more than that, nothing less. I can see that my stream health is terrible. I hope that I'm not losing a lot of frames. I hope that I'm not giving you a terrible live session. I hope that if you are getting a terrible live stream session right now, you will be able to get a better playback of this after the session. So please bear with me. Third world country problems, and honestly, using wireless internet is not ideal for this, but hey, I have to do it one way or the other, and here we are doing this. So back to the conversation. Go for speed, target for the MVP, only the core features that you have. Don't worry about design too much. Use whatever UI design kits and things that you might have in place. This will really help you focus on the core features and putting out the core features that you have in front of people, and aim for very tight timelines. I would recommend 3 months to take out whatever the core features is, and that way you'll be able to iterate from there and move on from there. So moving on, forward with the conversation. Once you figure out what it is that you want to build, one way to figure out what it is that you want to build and move on from that stage with speed is to gain initial alignment. And there's a lot of methodologies and processes and, sort of like workshops, design thinking workshops, that can help get everyone's input, get everyone together, get their perspective on what has to be done, and agree on what has to be done and who has to do it, right? Well, at least the MVP part of things that you need to agree and move on to this thing on onto the next steps. So looking at that, I think is super important that once you have a validated idea and or prototype, right, building the backlog of the features that you need to develop is super important. And aligning on that backlog once you have it populated and it's out there is super important as well. And while you're building that backlog, it's also important to build it with alignment of the people that you have it, and really rip the backlog out of your initial findings in your prototyping and discovery sessions. That way you'll be able to have a direct minimum viable product that you want to build, and a clearer version of how that looks like when you actually build it. So that is speaking to getting initial alignment. Now, again, I'm a big fan of design sprints. If you have heard any of the podcasts or some of the other content that we put out there, I think design sprints are a great way to get that initial alignment. There's other workshops and techniques. Again, I have recommended books in the description below. I will talk about them in a short bit, but then you will get different recommendations, different processes, actual things that you can do, worksheets, etc., within the different things that I've recommended in the description. So check them out there in the description. I'll be going through them really lightly over in an upcoming section in our discussion now. So gaining initial alignment is super important. This really helps speed things up once you have said, okay, cool, this is the validated thing that we want to move forward on. And it also really helps you along the way when it comes to making decisions and pivoting along the things, because once you have alignment and everyone's perspective on what needs to be done, where you need to go, and how everybody feels, and what are the capabilities that you have as a team, you are able to make swifter decisions along the way that will help you have way more momentum and keep the momentum going as you are building the product and as you hit some obstacles along the way. So get initial alignment once you figure out what your MVP is, build a backlog that you are fully aligned on, and once you have a full understanding of where everyone's stands and what everyone is doing, this would really help you move forward with speed, not having to worry about reporting back certain things. You sort of like cut out most of the conversations that you actually have to have in the future. Sort of like the questions from executives asking questions around how did you get to a certain thing or whatever it is, by aligning on the backlog level, on the level of the initial idea. You really get off the bat with a clear understanding of what needs to happen when. Talking about all of the processes, talking about design sprints and all of these things that I've been talking about, as well as while you'll be going through some of the books that are recommended in the description, I want you to think about being agile. Being agile is not about following a specific process. It's really about having the agility of making quick decisions, of moving fast, and using what you have as resources. And I think being agile is super important for startups and people who are building products, because this is how you get to be able to not get stuck up on processes and thinking about other things and having process paralysis, as I call it. So basically, process paralysis is process paralysis is when you want to follow a process and you even switch off your own thinking and sort of like um, logical reasoning, and just follow the process, right? Tightly so. Now, you don't have to follow every process as it is. I think it's actually um, a perfect way um, of being able to adopt just the things that you want from the processes that you are in, right? It's super important for us to be able to jump into a process and see what are the things that are working for us, what are the things that are not working for us. So use the parts of the process that really work for you, but you will only get to know what are the parts of the process that really work for you after you've sort of like went through the process and understand what's happening. But I think it's okay for us to adopt the methods that work that work for the uniqueness and the nature of our businesses and the teams that we are in. I think it's okay for us to look at a design thinking methodology and mishmash the screens, play around with what process comes before what, maybe the order of the process, or doing some processes not necessarily in the way that they were prescribed in the book, right? I think that is a totally right thing to do, and a lot of people are not fluid enough and not agile enough for them to be able to do that. So please consider this when you're going through some of the processes and the things that I have recommended in these books. Now it's the time to talk about the books. So the first book that I want to recommend is Design Sprint. This is a book by Jack Knapp. And this design sprints are actually a methodology that gets used pretty much mainly in Google as well as other companies. But this is a design process from Google. It's actually called the Google Design Sprint. If you look in the description below, you'll find a link to the Design Sprint kit. That way you'll be able to know all the different processes that are highlighted in this book. I love the book. I think it is a little bit outdated now, but it really helps you go through the process of mapping what your problem is, sketching your ideas, deciding on what you want to launch, prototyping, and how to test them. So it's called Solve Big Problems and Test New Ideas in Just 5 Days. I think it takes more than 5 days to do a proper job, but the purpose of design sprints is to really validate your idea and help you get a quick very good understanding and alignment with everybody, understanding how to go forth, right? And that way, going forth is really just the execution of building onto what you have validated. But I think it's a great process that a lot of teams can benefit from. There's a 5-day process. There's a 3-day process. I've spoke about design sprints quite a bit in other videos, so if you're keen on checking that out, check out the rest of the YouTube channel. There is tons of videos that we've made, also our podcast, which is called Not a UX Designer. I've also spoke about design sprints there quite a bit. The other thing that will help you with being agile and moving forward is having a clear decision maker within your team, understanding who the decision maker is, who is calling the shots for that project, whether it's the product owner, whether it's an executive within your team, or whatever it is. I think it's super important to have a clear decision maker, because most of the processes that you have in these books and within the design thinking space would really need somebody for you to make decisions, for you to be able to proceed forward to the next steps, and actually just make decisions for what has to happen going forth. Otherwise, without clear decision making, we're not really going anywhere, right? So that was Design Sprint. The next book that I want to recommend, this one was a book that I initially read from a previous place that I once engaged at and worked at. It's called Design Better Business. I think this is a great book because it really has got multiple authors, but it's got a lot of processes and things that you would find in there, methodologies around, prototyping, around, how to prepare for your project, how to, plan out different research methodologies and things like that. And again, please read these books and learn to adopt them to your specific unique situation and condition that you have, whether it's your team that is remote or together, or that is not as clued up with these processes as much as possible, etc., etc. So that is the second book that I recommend, that if you're starting up as, a product designer, a product owner, or anybody who's trying to build a great product, Design a Better Business is a great book to check out. Again, links in the description below. The third book, I don't have it with me. I don't have the paper version, but this is The Lean Startup, how constant innovation creates radically successful businesses, by Eric Ries. This is a great book that helps really position the idea of constant innovation, the idea of being agile, the idea of how to start up lean, how to start up quickly, and using whatever you have at your hands to be able to get what you want. So now you're thinking, okay, cool, V, you've told us about all these things. Don't get into, process paralysis. You need to, do prototyping and build all of these things, but I don't have the skills as the founder of the company. What do I do? I think this really comes to the conversation around building your team and doing the most as you can yourself. Now, a lot of people think design as a very complex thing, but I like thinking about design as really creating a product that feels like hosting a great party, right? The product should really be able to direct the user and highlight the things that are really important to the user. That is what design is about. That is what designers do. That is what us designers as designers do. Now, over the years, we've been able to perfect this, but I think with all the resources that are online right now around how your product can actually look and feel when it comes to interaction design, I think you can really focus on bringing alive the features and the things that you want to bring to people. Now, I'm looking at the chat here. I'm looking at at LinkedIn and in Discord. I don't think if you're in Discord, you got sort of like any live experience. But I'm happy to start pulling out any questions that you might have as we are almost towards the end of our session today. I really want to recommend that you check out the links that I've left in the description section, as well as if you want to ask anything, feel free to join our design community over on LinkedIn. So that is the Do Better UX Design community. We've got a LinkedIn group there that you can join us. So going back to, okay, V, I can't do this. Think about what are the most things that you can do yourself if you're a startup founder, if you're somebody who's really getting started into this. Are you more of a design person? Are you more of a coding person? Are you more of a sales person? Whatever it is that you can put in that helps you build your product or do user research or whatever it is really important for you to do most of the stuff that you can do yourself. Now, I've had other sessions where I've discussed extensively around hiring and building a team, around making your company design centric as a startup. So check out some of the other videos that we've created around that on the channel. I will try and put the links in the description, but that will be after the session. So I know that they're not in there right now, but if you're watching the replay of this, you'll be able to find all of the other videos as well that I'm talking about right now from the top of my head. So um, you really need to learn the processes that you need, even if it's not sort of like the tangible stuff, but you really need to learn the processes that you need to be able to direct your team and influence the direction of where your product is going and how it's being designed and how it's playing out, right? I think those are some of the core things that you need as a founder. And for you to be a founder to get this far where you are right now, I would think that you might already have some of those skills as well. But secondly, build a team around the skills that you need, both in design and technical. So you can do this by getting partners that help you do this, but bear in mind that if you're looking for somebody who's helping you with something like a technical thing, they'll probably be asking for a lot of equity because there's difficult work to do. If you're bringing both a design and a technical partner, then you might be considering, splitting a lot of equity out of that, because that's where most of the work actually goes. So the more of those two things that you can do, the better for you, the much more that you can be part of the project, be involved technically, and be able to drive the conversation. And I'm guessing that if you're watching this from a startup perspective, from a product designer perspective, you're probably leaning more towards sort of like the design skills. And I would recommend really being able to be proficient with the methodologies that will help you drive the process. So things like running a design sprint, being able to run design thinking workshops with your team, being able to do user research, being able to prototype and validate your ideas, etc., etc. Those are some of the things that I would really recommend that you focus on if you were diving into this. And if you're watching this, I'm guessing you're probably watching this more from a designer perspective than from a tech perspective anyway. And the third thing is to really be able to, if you have the capital and the money, is to be outsourcing some of the heavy lifting work and not necessarily giving out equity. So things like the development work, if you manage to do most of the design work, the directional work, initially, and you're working on an MVP, most of the development stuff can be outsourced. But I really recommend you having people who can do this in-house, whether it's yourself or somebody else that you're partnering out with. Either way, it's really up to you according to how much capacity, time, and money that you want to invest in your initial product. So just to give you a quick recap of what we went through today, we spoke about building a product that is based around a problem that you can see that is tangible in the world. That way it's easier for you to find market fit because the market is already there. What you're actually doing is to build a product around the market other than trying to find market fit after that. The second thing we spoke about was to find out better ways to document your ideas down, other than just the traditional prototyping of the key moments within your app, where you'll have to validate that with validate your ideas in the best possible way with a set of users. Now there's methodologies in some of the books that I've recommended around how to do usability testing, but I also spoke about two other methods that will help you validate your idea without actually prototyping the key moments within your app, and that is to build a prototype of your onboarding journey that sets the context of what your app is about or what your solution is about. The second way will be to do landing pages that can help you as well position what your app is about or what your solution is about, as well as have an opt-in option to start getting some of the early users and early adopters to help you test out your product and help you push out your product into the market if you're a startup. The third thing we spoke about was going for speed and using whatever you have. Think about the MVP and the MVP only. Use whatever UI design kits that you might find out there, or whatever things that you might find out there. Is super important for you to move at speed, really target for tight deadlines, tight timelines, such as 3 to 4 months, 6 months at maximum. That is what I would personally recommend. Otherwise, things really start falling apart after that timeline. The next thing that we spoke about was to get initial alignment. And the best way to do this for me is through things like design sprints. And once you have that initial alignment of what your idea is and what you're trying to build, then build a backlog that you're all aligned on with all the stakeholders within the project. That way you'll be able to get people to get buy-in, so that once you start executing, you're really executing at speed, and not having moments where you are trying to figure out the turning points. Alignment also helps you pivot quickly as you play out your actual execution of the product and going into development. And the last thing that I spoke about was not having process paralysis, in the terms of following processes to the T. You should be able to adopt the processes to the uniqueness of your business and your team. Only use the things that you actually need. There's a lot of fluff that has been built into most of the processes by the people who built these processes for them to be able to sell more time, because a longer process, more time, that's more money. Most of the time they try to sort of like justify the value of the processes by putting a lot of things. So look at the processes that you're following and the methodologies that you're following. That way you'll be able to cut out the other fluff that you don't need and really focus on the parts of that process that help you move forward, validate your ideas and prototype, and sort of like get the things that you need to get done quick. And the last thing that I spoke about, that was last but not least, was how to build a team. The best way is DIY, do it yourself, whether it's the design part of the things. Again, learn all the different methodologies and processes, especially within this book, Design a Better Business. I've left the links in the description. These are the processes that will help you drive the process of designing and developing products that users actually need and will actually want to use once you put them in their hands. Now, remember that companies that focus on design always win. Think about the best companies in this world. They strictly focus on design. Companies like Google, companies like Uber, Airbnb, etc., etc. They're companies that focus on design, and that is why they win. The reason why they win is that design thinking methodologies really focus on not having a product for just the sake of having it, but solving a problem, looking at a market and then building a product around that market, other than trying to market something to get market fit, right? So before I leave, if you need help skilling up your team in product design, or need someone to help you drive design and innovation within your organization, feel free to schedule some time with me. Check out my website in the description below, verymahenry.com. You'll be able to find a button there that says schedule time with me. You'll be able to schedule time with me. Feel free to have sort of like no thrills phone call with me, discuss different methodologies and things like that. So yeah, looking forward to chatting with some of you. This brings us to the end of our live streaming session today. And if you liked this content and conversation and would like to experience more, please consider subscribing to the channel and joining us over on our LinkedIn group. Check out our website, dobetterux.com, where you'll find upcoming events that we have, as well as our podcast and other content that we might put out there. Please, if you like this, please, put in that thumbs up. That way other people would find value in this as well. And until the next one, check out our website. Stay tuned. Looking out to interacting with you on social media. I'm your host, Varma Henry, and I'm out.